So I think the most difficult thing I find about tutoring is that it's extremely tiring and draining. You're required to be switched on for 5 hours and to be responding, hopefully in a positive way, to each student that you see. And that can be very draining. And I've found the best method to deal with that is to insist that you see the students in small groups. So rather than the one-on-one at the beginning, to say to them, I'd like you to come and see me in groups of 2 to 3. And that means that you're not repeating yourself 15 to 16 times through the 5 hours to each individual student, because obviously a lot of the comments you make are common to all the students and the questions are very similar each time, and it just eases the load really for you.
My biggest tip for new tutors is to relax. It's being a tutor is very much a learning process. You're not going to be the best tutor in the room the first day that you start. You are going to learn a lot very quickly, but that's okay. You've got that experience of life that will support you in the early on. But as you develop, you'll understand your role so it's okay to make mistakes. We all expect to make mistakes, and as long as you're learning from those mistakes, you'll become a great tutor.
My biggest tip for new tutors is to just become part of the learning community. So to participate as partners in the students' learning, and to get something out of it themselves. So we're all learning together. It's not just about us teaching the students something, it's about us collectively learning and creating a learning environment.
Learn the new university context and what teaching in higher education is looking like now, and co-learn with the students. There's nothing more beneficial and more fulfilling that I've found than co-learning with them and collaborating with them and advancing their work.
To be very direct and clear, so about mundane things like attendance and turning up on time and being ready, having your work printed to talk about and pinned up on the wall, and all of that kind of stuff becomes very important when you've got limited time to actually talk to your students. And then on the flip side, I think, going back perhaps to something I said earlier, but about being open and generous, so encouraging them to find a way through a design problem.
My biggest tip for new tutors is to be open to new ideas and to be open to new approaches to teaching. You may have an approach to teaching that is a particular way, but there are a number of different ways of approaching a number of different problems. So being in an academic environment enables you to be open and receptive to a number of different approaches. So by all means, be open.
To come to the class well prepared and understanding what is the learning outcome prior to going class help us to visualize what is the end goal is, supports in creating a learning environment in the class. Many times I've shown, that tutors are not well prepared, and what happens is that unless you structured the tutorial that 1 hour or a couple of hours, it's a lot of time. So unless you create those different activities, different components, breaking down that 1 or 2 hour into different interesting elements, that creates the students engaged in the classroom.
Be very open. I think sometimes you can come to teaching a design course with a specific expectation of an output, but to actually allow students to explore their own avenues of thought and arrive at a completely different point to what you might be expecting.
Be confident and believe in what you're teaching, but also be generous and nice and have that positive attitude.
Make sure you read the course outline before you start, because immediately at the start of a semester the students have lots of questions, and it's really good to know the answers. And I think if you don't know the answer to something, you can always say, I'm not sure, and I'll check and get back to you, or ask the lecturer to get back to you. And also just to be approachable and make it quite clear that you're there to help them.
I remember kind of coming here each week and just being totally apprehensive about what the 3-hour or 4-hour block would be, how I would possibly fill it in terms of what I would have to offer and the worth of what I would have to offer. And so that happened for the first couple of years. Every time I came here, it'd be like, oh, my stomach, oh, it's going to be terrible. But what I started to realise after a period of time was that the actual time of being here and engaging with the students disappeared, like seemingly within minutes. And the feeling of elation in terms of the engagement of ideas stayed with me long after those couple of hours. So I think it's to engage in the process and to understand that the teaching of the tutoring, engaging in design education is an education in itself, and it's a fantastic one. Okay, so whatever it is, if you engage with it in the same way that you'd hope your students will, then it will just get better and better and better over time. That's the key.